Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Girl with the Shovel. I'm Angela, and today I'm going to be talking about the best herbs to grow indoors, as well as a few that maybe we should avoid. So a few years ago, I went on a really big indoor edible kick, and I tested out a whole bunch of different herbs, and some of them stuck, some of them didn't, some of them did better than others. I tested a lot out as far as moving locations, trying to water more, trying a different pot or soil mix. And I will tell you, some of them definitely performed a lot better than others. So the first indoor herb that I would recommend is rosemary. So rosemary actually grows really well in a nice south-facing sunny window, and it's not particularly picky. The only thing is make sure that you don't overwater it. Make sure you have a nice, good sandy soil mix or have lots of perlite in that soil mix and don't overwater it. Have good drainage. But then it has a wonderful smell and it makes your whole space smell like wonderful herbs. My second recommendation for indoor herbs is oregano. Now, oregano is great because even when it doesn't get a whole ton of light, it still has, the small typical leaves of oregano. But that's okay because oregano leaves aren't meant to be really large. They can stay small and they still get the job done when you're cooking with them. So definitely oregano was one of my go-tos because sometimes I could move it a little bit out of that bright sunny spot and it would still be okay. The only thing is make sure that you're harvesting from it regularly because if it starts getting old or like more mature stems, they can be a little tough and woody. So make sure that you keep trimming it back. Now my third best indoor herb is mint. Okay, one of the reasons why I love mint indoors is first off, the leaves are still decent sized, right? We won't get the huge leaves that you get outdoors, but they also don't get aggressive like they get outdoors. Mint can be extremely invasive. So when you bring it indoors, it actually solves a big headache on your part, as well as it does really well indoors. It can get a little leggy, but that just means that it's time to trim and time to harvest some of your amazing mint. And then there's thyme. Thyme is great because once again, we don't need those big, huge leaves of some of the other herbs, and it grows just fine indoors. It's small and compact, and it does really well in windowsills. And as long as you get like a south-facing window, it should be fine. And last on my list is chives. Chives actually grows really well indoors, and then when you cut it back, because of course you want to harvest it, it springs back really well. It also does well in that south-facing window with lots of light, but you won't see this guy getting leggy because, I mean, it's just a vertical plant. So you won't have issues with legginess, with small leaves, with some of the issues that you see with some of the other herbs. So chives is definitely a go-to if you're starting out with your herbs. And then on to a few herbs that I personally would avoid. Now I know this is like everyone's favorite herb to grow indoors, which is why you see it in like every mock herb garden you can find online, right? Like every single one has basil. Now, basil, I have found it doesn't do as well indoors, mainly because it doesn't get the same amount of light, okay? Outdoors, basil gets these big, gorgeous, huge leaves that you can use for your pesto and amazing basil things, right? But the problem is indoors, to get that amount of light, to get those gorgeous big leaves to harvest, it's ridiculously difficult, okay? If you're having success with basil, good job. But personally, I was living much more north of where I am today, and there just weren't enough hours of sunlight in the day. And my basil did not do very well, no matter how much light I gave it. Okay, a suggestion is if you really like basil, go with a Thai basil. Okay, a Thai basil has a little bit smaller leaves, naturally. Okay, so it doesn't need these big, huge leaves of your traditional basil. And Thai basil actually does a bit better indoors. My next indoor herb that doesn't do the greatest, I know people are going to be upset, but cilantro. I know, I love cilantro. I'm a huge fan of cilantro. But growing it indoors, once again, not enough light. All of these leaves come out very small, very leggy. It's just very difficult to get a nice thick bunch of cilantro. And then the fact that when you harvest cilantro, a recipe usually calls for like an entire bunch, unless it's a garnish, but usually you need a whole bunch of cilantro. Okay, and I don't know about you, but that means my whole plant is gone, right? So in order to produce enough cilantro to be able to use it as a recipe or in your cooking, I definitely recommend that you do it outside in a large pot, in a few different sections. So maybe you grow one bunch, and then 2 or 3 weeks later you start another bunch, and 2 or 3 weeks later you start a third bunch, right? And then you can start rotating depending on how much cilantro you use. But that is really how to make it realistic to use cilantro from your own garden and grow it yourself. I just haven't had good luck with growing it indoors because, once again, small, leggy leaves, and it just does not produce enough per recipe for what I need to cook with, and most recipes want. Okay, and then my last herb that I would avoid growing indoors is Italian parsley. Now, this is very similar to cilantro as far as the leaves just get leggy and small, and they need a whole lot of light to be able to grow large bunches of parsley, right? Now, you do have another option though. If you love parsley, if you use a lot of parsley, and you don't have an outdoor space and you want something indoors, then I would recommend you use a curly leaf parsley, okay? Curly leaf parsleys grow a bit better indoors, and they produce a little bit more of the leaves because, you know, they're all curly and it bunches up a bit more. Anyway, so you get a bit better of a harvest with the curly leaf variety. And then for some final tips about growing indoor herbs, make sure that you always place it in a very bright location. These plants are used to being in full sun, and so make sure that it's either in like an east or west facing window at least, preferably a south facing window. And then make sure it has plenty of drainage. Make sure that you are watering it frequently, okay? If it is like summertime and you have your gorgeous pots on your south facing window, I would expect, as long as it's well draining soil in a pot, I would expect to have to water it about every day. Okay, if that's a good enough gauge for you. And if it's in lower light, expect to decrease that amount of watering. Another tip is that to be able to keep your herbs fresh and growing, make sure that you're using a fertilizer. Check out some garden safe fertilizers. Okay, don't just be pouring whatever chemicals you want on there. Beware. Use a garden safe fertilizer, and one specifically for edibles. And then also make sure that you're trimming them, that you're constantly pinching, harvesting, and that will help these, several of these herbs will start to become a bit woody and a bit thicker stemmed if you're not continuously just freshening it up, pinching back, and harvesting bits here and there. And then my last recommendation is have each herb in its own separate pot, okay? I know sometimes you see these big gorgeous planters and they're all scattered around throughout. Those are okay. I say they're okay, but they don't always work. Usually what happens is however you're treating your plants, whatever herbs like that treatment the best start to take over. And then whatever herbs maybe need a little more water, maybe you're getting too much water, they'll start to die back. And then instead of getting like 5 or 6 different types of herbs, you'll only get like 2. Okay, so I really recommend each herb in its own separate pot. And then if you can tell, oh, this one's starting to dry out a bit more, I'll keep an eye on that. I'll start watering this one more frequently, and you don't have to adjust any of your other watering. Anyway, so overall, it really helps you be able to care for them better indoors if they're each in their own separate pot. But remember that honestly, you have to do what's best for you. If some of these plants on the list you don't ever eat or you wouldn't ever cook with, then don't grow them. I've done that in the past. And I've had several herbs that grow great and bushy and large, and then I just never use it because I just don't cook with every single herb out there. But I mean, my kids love broccoli pasta, which uses oregano and thyme, and so I am all about the oregano and thyme, so make sure that you are using plants and herbs that you and your family will actually eat and that you would enjoy growing, because overall, that's what would make the best indoor herbs. And if you want some help growing your herbs year-round, check out my blog post of some of the best indoor herb garden kits. These are the ones that are hydroponic. They have the grow lights built in. Some of them have sensors that'll tell you when to fertilize, when to add water. They're amazing, man. They are amazing. So check out my blog post in the description below for my review of those indoor herb garden kits. And then let me know in the comments below which herbs you're the most excited about growing this year. Maybe it's winter, maybe not, maybe it's spring and you're all excited and ready to get out that shovel and get going. But let me know in the comments below which one you're gonna start out with. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any more amazing plant tips. See you in the next video.